The New York Giants have been stuck in a vicious cycle now for several years. Will they finally break free of that this year? I'll explain it all for you coming up next on the Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, credential member of the New York Giants media for Locked On, as well as for New York Giants on SI, which is where you can find all of our written work over there. And as always, welcome on into my Blue Crew community members, my newcomers, my everydayers, and everybody in between. Thanks so much for spending part of your day with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And today's episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, folks, on today's episode, I was thinking all week long as I was drawing up ideas and whatnot, how the Giants have been stuck in a vicious cycle. It just seems like they seem to make the same mistakes over and over and over. And it just sets off this cycle where instead of, moving forward with linear, it just goes around and around and around. And the team just, it's like they're spinning their wheels and not making any progress. So I wanted to talk about three areas that I see this happening. They include the quarterback situation, free agency, and then I'll wrap things up with the fallout as a result of all this spinning their wheels. So I'll explain what I mean as I get to each segment. But I just see the Giants as being stuck in a cycle right now. And will they break it? Gosh, I sure hope so. If they don't, it's going to be another long year for those of us who follow the Giants in the season. So let's get started here. I'm going to start off with the quarterback situation. Now, here's the thing. If you've been listening to me for, a long time, if you've been reading my work, going back to last year, I was pounding the table for the Giants to take a quarterback at some point in that draft. That quarterback class was so ridiculously deep that I felt that they had to do it. They had to protect themselves in the event that Daniel Jones didn't work out, in the event that Daniel Jones didn't make it back from the ACL injury. I felt that it was just malpractice if they did not take a quarterback. Now, the other side to that is I didn't feel that they should just settle at number 6 for any old quarterback. Obviously, if you don't have the guy that you want at number 6, which is where they were drafted last year, you don't spend the pick. But I didn't see any reason why come day 3, or even in the post-draft time, when there were still some quarterbacks available, there was no reason, as I saw it, to not pick one of those guys up and take a flyer on him, develop them, see if the guy can maybe become something, get him used to the system so that if something happened with Daniel Jones or, the backups, you would at least have somebody who you were grooming and starting to work with. And my reasoning also was, if Brian Daboll is the quarterback guru that, everybody says he is, he could have at least, worked to get that kid, whoever that kid might have been, at an acceptable level. Well, the Giants did none of it. They didn't take a quarterback in the draft. They didn't sign one in free agency, or the undrafted free agent. They rolled with Daniel Jones. They rolled with Drew Lock, who they felt, could win them some games if he had to go in there. And they stuck with Tommy DeVito. And we all know what happened, folks. We all know what happened. Daniel Jones never regained his 2022 form, which the more I think about it, the more I can't help but wonder if, having Saquon Barkley back there was a big factor in why Daniel Jones looks so, capable all of a sudden. They never, Drew Lock was hot and cold. He had that one big game against the Colts, but otherwise was just up and down. Tommy DeVito couldn't find the magic that he had during DeVito Mania the year before. The quarterback situation was a disaster. And all the while, as I'm watching this unfold, I'm thinking to myself, gee, I wonder if they regret not taking a flyer on a quarterback that they could have been developing all this time. Maybe, especially when it became evident they were going to move on from Jones. It kind of became evident that Drew Lock is not going to be back. Right now, the only guy who's going to be back is DeVito, and that's because he's an exclusive rights free agent that's not going to cost him a lot. You wonder if maybe there's a little regret there, right? Because what would it have cost to take a flyer on an undrafted free agent or pick up a guy, late in the draft? What would that have cost? Not a whole lot. So here we are, fast forward to the present time. The Giants quarterback situation is a mess. Now you throw in the fact that Joe Schoen, Brian Daboll have been given a grace period by Giants ownership. An ownership team that, by the way, is expecting the team to do better, to win more games than they did last year. 3-14, a franchise worst record for the Giants. So now you've got the added pressure to where, okay, you just got to hope now that because the pressure has been cranked up before they've even done a single move, you've got to hope that they don't go and shop hungry and make a stupid decision that's going to continue this vicious cycle with the quarterback where we just go round and round and without an answer. All right. So, you have options, obviously. You can say, draft, take Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward with pick number 3. That's certainly a possibility. Wouldn't rule that out. The big one, though, has been, potentially acquiring Matthew Stafford from the Los Angeles Rams if he becomes available. Now, if Stafford does go on the trade block, I would not, under any circumstances, give up the first round pick. Okay? If I'm the Giants, I'm not giving up the first round pick. All right? What I am offering instead is at least a second round pick this year and maybe a conditional second next year based on play time. Because Stafford has had an injury history the last, I think, 4 or 5 years. So if you say, okay, the condition is he's got to play X percentage of the snaps, and then that second round pick next year becomes a first rounder, I can live with that. Okay. I think the Giants should be able to live with that. But in the meantime, what I would do, like I said, if they can acquire Stafford and not have to give up the first round pick this year, which again, to me would be a deal breaker, they now have the option. If Ward and Sanders are off the board, they can trade down if they want to pick up some extra picks to compensate for what they might have to give up to acquire Stafford. They can obviously take the best available, which would be, Travis Hunter, or if Abdul Carter is on the board, or Mason Graham, depending on who, how the first 2 picks are. I would go with Travis Hunter probably in that spot, depending on what they do also in free agency, if they bring in a veteran free agent cornerback. So yeah, I would not, they've got to do something, all right? Because their quarterback situation right now is just one big muddied mess. It's this cycle where for almost 6 years, nobody really knew if Daniel Jones was going to work out, but yet they kept at it. They kept hoping for the best. Brian Daboll really, I don't want to say it was all on Daboll because you got to put some of it on the player as well, but Jones did not flourish the way I think a lot of people hoped he would under Daboll's watch. All right. So the Giants are now in a situation where they have to get a veteran. They're going to have to pay for a veteran. Okay. Not only, in the case of Stafford, would they have to trade assets to get him, they're going to have to redo that contract, which is a whole nother topic for another time. So Their failure, in my opinion, in not taking a flyer on a quarterback last year, at some point, it's going to cost them through the nose. Right now, fortunately, they have the money to do it. But wouldn't it have been nice if they had had some sort of stability at the position and they could have said, okay, you know what? We don't have to worry about trading. We don't have to worry about giving a veteran a huge contract. We can spend that money on the offensive line. We can spend that money on a different position and we could just draft like we normally would. Well, they don't have that. So the circle goes round and round until they find their next franchise quarterback. Will that be this year? Will they trade down, get more picks, including a first rounder next year, and maybe look to package to move up in the 2026 draft? All that is so early right now. We have to see how free agency goes, but these are all considerations that the Giants have to take. And the funny thing is, again, you have a situation where Schoen and Daboll need to produce results. So if they don't, they're out. They may not even be here in 2026 to make this decision. So the pressure's on. And, the question is, can they stay cool, calm, and collected and make the right decision with this pressure that's already existing? Or are they going to do something stupid that keeps this team in the, this NFC East cellar for this foreseeable future? That's the question. Fingers crossed that they don't do that they do something smart and they get this team on the right track. But of course, that remains to be seen. All right, coming up next, I'm going to talk about free agency and the vicious cycle that I think is going to continue when we get to the start of free agency. So that's coming up right after this. Hey, Giant fans, when the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game so that even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. The app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. And right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. Happy Friday, by the way. We made it through another week, the first full week without football of any kind. A couple weeks, the combine is coming up, and I'm working on getting a guest for you at some point next week. I'm hoping I'll be able to do that next week. Another NFL draft analyst, because it's always good to hear different opinions about the draft. And then, of course, the tag window is going to come up. The combine, free agency will be here before we know it. So there's going to be plenty of stuff to cover here on the Locked On Giants podcast, and I hope you will tune in to keep up with it all with me here. All right. We are talking about the vicious cycle that has kind of engulfed the New York Giants. We just got through talking about the quarterback situation. I want to talk about free agency now and the cycle that I've kind of seen develop with free agency. Now, the biggest thing is that the Giants over the last few years have bled leadership. They have let leaders walk out the door for whether it's a trade, whether it's free agency, whatever the case may be. And they, by letting this leadership in the locker room go out the door, I think it's kind of affected the desired result as far as solidifying the locker room, building the desired culture, and so on. Right. So you lose a Julian Love, you lose an Xavier McKinney, you lose a Saquon Barkley, you send Leonard Williams packing. Right. Even Daniel Jones was considered a leader. Right. And there have been other guys. Ben Bredeson was a silent leader that you didn't hear a whole lot about, but, he spoke up. Ashawn Robinson was a leader. He signed elsewhere. You keep bleeding leadership. And it's like, after a while, it's like, okay, who do we turn to? Who do we look for? And, the stable guy, if you will, has been Dexter Lawrence. He's been a constant. I mean, you can't, if you're in that locker room, I don't think you can even look at Andrew Thomas, who has had injury issues. So you have this constant cycle of guys leaving the locker room, leaders who are leaving the locker room for one reason or another. Well, guess what, folks? That process is probably going to happen again this offseason. All right. The leaders in question that I'm talking about, Darius Slayton, I don't think he's going to be back. Jason Pinnock, I don't think he's going to be back. All right. So they're going to continue to bleed leadership. And, they go and they try and replace it with new guys that are coming in. But at some point, you have to say, okay, look, we're trying to build a core foundation in our locker room. And, you have your left tackle, you've got your quarterback, you got your receiver, you got your cornerback, you got your linebacker. Great. But where's the core foundation in the leadership ranks? Dexter Lawrence. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Can you say Brian Burns? I would say yes. Maybe Brian Burns will step up and, not step up, but be voted a captain. I think he should if he's not. Bobby Okereke. Okay, yeah, I can make a case for him as well. Kayvon Thibodeau. I don't know. Jury's out on him. Who else you got? Maybe Malik Neighbors. Is he ready for that kind of a role? So the point being is, just as they've been turning over the roster, they've been turning over the leadership. And that, to me, is a concern if you're trying to build continuity in the locker room. So at what point do you say, okay, you know what? We fleshed out all the guys from the previous regime. We've got our guys in here. Let's start building a core leadership group. At what point do they do that? They just keep changing guys out. And look, don't get me wrong. It's okay to have, new draft picks are coming in and they develop into leaders. That's fine. But it just seems like more guys are leaving than they can replace. And that's where I think that cycle just kind of needs to stop, because it's just not working what they're doing. And, it's whether they want to admit it or not, I think sometimes it has an effect on the locker room, because you have guys that maybe look for leaders and they don't have them. And especially when the leaders you do have are on injured reserve. So I just feel like, that's going to stop at some point. Who cares if the leaders were drafted by the previous regime or brought in under the previous head coach or whatever? Stabilize that situation. Because, letting these guys go out, especially the homegrown guys like Slayton, that's, at what point do you develop, at what point do you say draft, develop, and retain? And they haven't really done that yet. Now, granted, Joe Schoen has only been here, this is going to be his fourth off season, but let's start seeing that, because really the only guys that he has extended were guys that were drafted by the previous regime: Dave Gettleman, Andrew Thomas, and Dexter Lawrence. So, and if you want to throw Saquon Barkley in there on the franchise tag, you can as well. So let's see if the Giants start to really, retain some of these guys. There are guys that you can make a case that maybe might be in line for extensions. Kayvon Thibodeau might be one, although I would not extend him just yet. I think the jury's still out on him. I would not extend Evan Neal. Would you look to maybe do Wan'Dale Robinson? Maybe. Just set that core foundation up, that cornerstone, which is part of your locker room foundation, and just see what comes of it. All right. So that's another thing that I'm concerned about, and we'll see how that plays out. Okay. So the fallout of this vicious cycle, what are we looking at? Tell you right after this. Hey, Giant fans, football season may be over, but basketball is in full swing, and there's no better way to stay in the game than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With Prize Picks, you pick more or less on at least 2-player projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. Prize Picks is quick and easy, and you can set up your lineup in as little as 60 seconds. And their fast and easy, secure withdrawals mean you get your winnings in as little as 15 minutes. Plus, weekly promos like Taco Tuesday give you discounted player projections for even better value. So go on and download the app today and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. Hey, Giant fans, if you are looking to join an exclusive community of Big Blue Faithful where you can discuss the team and receive inside information in a toxic-free environment, then you need to check out the Locked On Giants Blue Crew community. Members get access to our exclusive by invitation only Discord channel where we can talk with one another, ask questions, get breaking news, and so much more. Plus, as part of the Locked On Giants Blue Crew, I text exclusive updates and info directly to your phone, and you can communicate with me via text one-on-one. So come on and see what it's all about with a free 14-day trial. And when you use our promo code BLUECREW, you will get your first 2 months after your 14-day trial ends at a 50% discount off the regular monthly price of $4.99. If you don't like it, cancel before the trial ends and you'll owe absolutely nothing. For more information or to register, visit joinsubtext.com/LockedOnNYGiants and be sure to enter that promo code BLUECREW, BLUECREW, at the top of the page for your 2-month discount. Text and data rates may apply. See your carrier's plan for details. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. And look, we've been talking about the vicious cycle that is kind of developed in the land of the Giants. And here's the fallout of this cycle. And I mentioned it at the start of the program, but I mentioned it again. It has led to ownership having a lack of patience. That is why we have seen the turnover that we have seen since Tom Coughlin resigned, with the different head coaches, with the different coaching staffs, the change in GMs. It has led to, like I said, players coming in and out of the lineup, and it has led to no identity for this team. It's like we still don't know what this Giant team is all about. It has strayed so far from its roots that we don't know. How would you describe the Giants team other than to say that they're not a very good organization right now based on the product that's on the field? So, like I said, now you have the pressure from John Mara, who, whether he meant to or not, basically saying, look, I hope this turnaround doesn't take long because I'm just about out of patience. But he didn't quantify what he meant by take long. Does he mean a year? Does he mean 2 years? What exactly is the time frame for him to where he's going to say, all right, you know what? I had enough. Joe, Brian, thank you for your efforts, but I'm moving on in a different direction. That part is not clear. But again, the danger that has been created, and even though Joe Schoen has said he's not going to pull any quote unquote Hail Marys to save his skin, that he's got a plan that he wants to stick to. We all know, ladies and gentlemen, that plans can change. Unexpected circumstances pop up, things happen. Sometimes you stumble upon, a happy accident that wasn't planned. And sometimes the plan that you thought was so good because it sounded good on paper or looked good on paper, maybe doesn't work out. So I guess what I'm concerned about most of all is, will the Giants, in feeling this pressure, will they do something that further hurts the organization and puts this team in line for another bad season in 2025? Now, I sure hope that's not the case. I've told you many times, as you guys have written to me and said, hey, I'm tired of losing. I'm tired of this. I want a better product. Well, I feel the same way. All right. When the Giants are bad, that affects everything I do. And I don't like talking about, a losing team. I'd rather talk about a winning team. I'd rather talk about all the things they do right. All right. That hasn't been the case. And I'm not going to sugarcoat anything for you. But I have to wonder again if the lack of patience that has been conveyed publicly, how might that affect anybody? And they could sit there and say, oh, that's not going to affect me. I still have a job to do. I call baloney on that. All right. You could sit there and deny that, you don't feel the pressure, that you're just going to go about and do your job. But in the back of your mind that you have got to produce different results. And that's not easy because you're competing with 31 other teams who are looking to get better. In addition to the opponents you're going to face this coming season. So is the pressure up? Oh, yeah. Are the seats under Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll already warm? You better believe it. Will they come through and quiet the critics and show John Mara that his faith in them was justified? Let's hope so, folks, because it's going to be another long year if it's not. So we'll give them the benefit of the doubt. We'll think positively that they'll get it straightened out once free agency starts, once the draft rolls around. Hopefully it gets sorted out, and hopefully we'll have more positive football things to talk about on future shows here on the Locked On Giants podcast. All right, everybody, that's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Giants. Again, thank you so much for spending part of your day with us here. Be sure to tune in Monday. All new episodes. I'll let you know what's coming up. Until then, have a great weekend, everybody, and I'll see you on Monday.